Okay, what we'll do, start looking at human resource planning, and it's not a difficult area. It's not a difficult area, and it's the precursor to looking at recruitment and selection. So there's some key points I will highlight, and then I will meet with the groups to discuss your proposals. Right? Yeah, so we'll stop about 7:30, and then I'll meet with you to discuss your projects. So there are about 6 topics. We might finish here maybe we might get to 4. We'll see how it goes. But we'll do a general overview, then look at some objectives pretty quickly, and then these are the things you would need to know. The 4 phases of HR planning, and they're not difficult phases. Right? It talks about a phase of environmental assessment. You actually assess your environment. Then you look at forecasting demand. Right? You look at forecasting demand, assessing the supply of human resources, and then you do a kind of analysis, supply and demand analysis, where you compare supply with demand and to determine whether there are gaps, whether it is too high or whether it is too low. So here's the definition for HR planning. Identifying the current and future human resources. So you're saying we want to be able to deal with the current and future human resources that can lead to an organization achieving its goals. That's what we want to be able to identify. Do we have the appropriate resources, Donna, that would allow the organization to achieve its goals? And when we look at sustainability over time, will we have the appropriate resources for the future to make sure the organization achieves its goals? And we're saying it serves as a link between human resource management and the overall strategy for the organization. So I hope by now students are appreciating the strategic link. And as I said, the thing about this course, at the master's level, your questions in the exam, a number of them will have this strategic context, not just operational. Right? So some of the objectives: more efficient and effective use of human resources. And we know when we say effective and efficient, effective that the human resources are able to achieve their goals, but also in doing that, they're able to use it in these resources in a timely manner and not using up a lot of their money and their other technologies. And to better employ people who possess the necessary competencies and to facilitate your mission and plans. And it would also add the vision, to facilitate the vision, mission, and plan. And the final one is what a lot of organizations don't like to do, and that is relieve the organization of unnecessary or unneeded labor. So what should really happen in the public sector, that when the politicians hire people for election, they should let them know that it is only maybe for 6 months to a year, but it is not a permanent job. Right? But one of the problems we have now in our economy, and an economist highlighted it again recently, that the public sector wage costs are extremely high. So a lot of the money that the government has to pay out is for an overstaffed public sector that is severely overstaffed. Right? But again, you know the politics of it. No politician wants to be responsible for sending home the poor people. So since you don't want to send home the poor people to lose votes, nobody touches it. But at the same time, we have a serious economic problem that the cost of running the public service is really too high. We need to cut our costs and cut our costs significantly in particular ways. So remember, folks, as we said before, in prescriptive HR, you are prescribing what is the ideal, but in descriptive HR, there is very little action that is taken to really relieve. Even in the private sector, I think not a lot of organizations actually do what is necessary to relieve the organization of unnecessary labor. So what do you think is very difficult in the Caribbean? There's one particular reason that makes it difficult for us to relieve organizations of unnecessary labor. Trade unions, yes. Because our trade unions are so strong that they generally push against it. So I remember Massey, one of our local chains, Caribbean chains operating in Barbados and other Caribbean islands, about 2 or 3 years ago, they were restructuring. They had a supermarket chain of supermarkets, and they wanted to close one, and they wanted to retrench, I think it was about 400 or 500 workers, and the union said, you cannot do that. I was quite amazed how a union could tell a private organization, you cannot shut down an organization. They were actually shutting down this supermarket. They were shutting it down, closing it, and then opening some other kind of wholesale place. But the union tells them, you cannot send home these people. And but did they have 400 employees at that one location, or they were using it as to send home? But don't forget, they were restructuring generally, right? They were trying to reduce costs. So they actually gave in and did not. I was quite surprised. But I understand now they don't have a choice. That now they actually have to start retrenching a lot of people because of not meeting some of their profit targets, you see. But again, I find in small islands and small economies, it's very difficult for private business to not factor in the politics of it, because at some point they will want some kind of benefit, something that they will go and ask the politicians, could you give us a waiver of duties or something? So it's very difficult in these small countries to ignore. It's very difficult to ignore the reality of day-to-day politics. So these are some factors that determine HR plans. I'm not going to go through all of it, but in essence we are saying some of the points we mentioned: the strategy, the culture, the competitive environment within which the organization operates will be the main ones we want to focus on. You can pass that one. So these are the 4 phases I talked about: the environmental assessment, your forecasting demand, and assessing supply. So this is what we began with. This is the environment of business. So the organization goes about scanning this environment. So you're looking at all of the factors that are impacting on the organization. In other words, are there some global trends impacting on the business, right? Are you in the business of producing a particular product, but there are some global competitors now coming in, right? So one of the biggest problems we have in Barbados right now is that pertaining to like chicken. A lot of the chicken farmers are arguing, oh, they're importing chicken from all over the world, England and all over, and it's eroding the profits of the local poultry industry. Right? But the reality is, open trade, you really can't be putting in, restrictions to trade, because you would run into problems with the United States and those countries. What about economics? Is there an economic downturn impacting on the business? Are there technological issues? So is there available technology? So what will technology do if you have available technology? Technology will replace certain jobs. So what if the company wants to implement new technology? There are human resource implications, right? There could be another issue that there's a particular category of workers needed, but you don't have enough people in your country trained. What do you do? So there's actually a scarcity of people in a particular demanded area. So these are just some things that we say that would drive demand, and that is assessing future needs. So what is the basis for assessing future demand? What will we have to look at to assess future demand? What will we have to look at to truly assess future demand? We said the current needs, but we're talking about future demand.
Yeah, future demand.
Sorry?
The strategic goals of the
company. Yeah. You need to look at strategic goals, which should be linked to the vision, and which should be linked to the mission. In other words, what does this organization want to achieve in the next 2, 3 or so years? So based on what it wants to achieve with these strategic goals, which could be, as I said, from 1 to 3 years, I need to determine what are my human resource requirements to fit into year 1, fit into year 2, and to fit into year 3. Some people go into 5 years. And that's what we're talking about. This long-term view for the company. And that's what we say future HR needs. And then 3, we assess supply. So when we assess supply, what are we talking about, my friend here? Assessing supply means what? People. It's people, right? The employees. So you're really assessing the employees that's in the organization. And then finally, action planning. So action planning is a very simple one. So where you're assessing supply and demand. If they're equal, there might be no problem. But if demand outstrips supply, you had a problem. You have a problem. So what will be the problem if demand outstrips supply? Yes. So what do? You can recruit from outside the organization, and if the country does not have the technology can do it, you do it. But what if your resources are not available within the country? Right. And that's where the issue now of immigrant labor comes in, that you actually have to go outside of your country and allow people to come in who will have the appropriate skills and abilities and competencies. So the key thing that drives it really is a national shortage. You really have a big problem you're trying to resolve. So how come these other ones didn't come up? Forecasting human resource requirements. Yeah. Right, so this is the forecasting. Sorry, it didn't come out. This is the assessing the supply.
Might just take off the light.
No, from here it's dark. The problem is here it's dark, yeah. So you look at your demand for workers. You look at if there's a shortage, if demand is greater than supply, and the company needs to find ways to recruit people, right? You find ways to recruit people to fill the shortage. If supply exceeds demand, what's happening there? It means you have more people than you need, and that's where you need to actually then right. So you can do that, right? You can do that too. You can do shorter hours if you want to keep people. But that's if it's a short-term thing. But long-term, you really would not be able to do that in the long term. The, right. So, but these are some of the decisions you will have to make then. You know, how do I, if there's a shortage, how do I fill a gap? Do I want to bring in people on full time? Do I want to have short contracts? Do I want part-time people? Do I want temporary people? So these are some decisions you would need to make for the organization. Yes, Rory.
So what do you do if that initially the demand, like there was limited supply of the workers, so you had to pay premium to get the skilled workers you need. Then whatever skill that was becomes in abundance, so it becomes cheaper. What do you do? Because then you're paying a premium for the skill that your competitors can now go out and get others who have that skill at a cheaper rate. Like, let's say, for example, that might be a bad example. Antigua is supposed to start a law school along with the UWI campus that was supposed to start. So lawyers aren't scarce, but let's say lawyers were scarce in Antigua, and you had to hire lawyers as a big part of your firm. And then suddenly the law school opens and there's lawyers in abundance. You're paying them, $6,000-7,000 to track these people because they were scarce at the time when you needed them. Now there's tons of them and you can get them for $2,000-3,000. what do you do? Because it could put you out of business if you're not paying a premium, but then it could also hurt you if you don't show that loyalty to your.
Well, but if it is an excess, companies love that, right? If it is an excess, all that has to happen, you can get cheaper lawyers.
So you get rid of the ones you have and get the cheaper ones.
Well, nobody get, well, if you're on contract, if the lawyers, but it's not only getting rid of the ones you have, it's those who are competent. So you need to look at the issue of competencies, you see. If you have competencies, right, if the workers you have the existing workers are really highly competent and distinctively competent, you can't afford to get rid of them. So I think the issue would be, right,
So you could look at that example, maybe this is a better example. So after Maria in Dominica, a ton of Dominicans come down to you. Now, you were a construction firm and there wasn't many carpenters, so you had to be paying them $250 a day or so to get them. Now you got a ton of, this is hypothetical, but it's
right,
related to something that's real. And then you get a ton of carpenters from Dominica. Now the next competitors say, wait, there's a ton of carpenters looking for work. No, I can pay them $100 a day. Now, if your carpenters might be skilled, but $250 is not best you fire them and get $100 once.
well, it depends on how competent they are, you know. But that's market forces. That's what the capitalist system is about. That's what market forces are about. So if the market is such that it's going to drive prices down, it's good for customers, you see. It might be bad for the person playing the trade, but it's good for customers. So I'm saying this, but this is what you do before you make any decisions like that. You actually should do a comprehensive skills inventory. This is an internal supply assessment. So before you do anything with any staff you have, you need first to determine, do I have any staff that have some unique, distinctive competencies? So I look at this, I do the skills inventory. I look at years service, their knowledge of the systems, processes. I look at their technology skills. I look at their abilities and capabilities. So I want to find out the people that I cannot afford to lose. So once I identify the people in my current organization that I cannot afford to lose, I flag them. Remember last week, I think we were talking about the problem that Limeade and other the banks, where you just allow people to take packages, and then you realize a lot of your distinctively competent or bright people with institutional knowledge actually left the organization. So you don't want to do that. So this is a very structured process. It is normally IT driven, but the IT systems for HR inventories are very expensive. So a lot of small companies really won't be able to afford it, right? But it is something you do. But generally speaking, I would say most organizations should actually have this. They should really have these kind of systems in place. But many don't. Right? So once you do this skills inventory, I then know what the demand is. I know my supply, and I make a comparison. Right? This is the break-even point. Right? This is where demand meets supply. Right? Demand higher, supply higher. That is where now you can make your choices that if there are more people than I need to go to make a decision who will go. And this would help you to know who will go. If I have a shortage, I know I keep who I have. I just need to look for additional people. I can look outside my company. I don't have a choice. I look outside. I look in the country. I look outside my country. I look in the Caribbean. I look in Germany. I look in Finland. I look in Japan, China. Because here in the Caribbean, we have chefs from all over the world. Chefs from France. French chefs come here to work sometimes. Chefs from Britain, Scotland. So there are a lot of executive chefs who come to the Caribbean and Barbados, and they work in very high-profile jobs because they argue there's a lack of executive chefs with international expertise, especially to the high end. You know that they know how to prepare the international dishes and the quality of it and everything. So there are a lot of international chefs who work here and run restaurants within hotels and top-notch restaurants. So this is the supply assessment. The strategic plan would have given you guidance as to what the demand is, and that the company plans to expand its market share. Suppose the company plans to expand its market share. Well, not its market share. If it has a particular product, it wants to improve sales by 10% over 3 years. Right? So it wants to increase its sales, or the company might want to create a new product. a new product line in 1 to 2 years. Right? So, based on these, what are the requirements for the first one? What are the requirements for the first one? Tracy, what do you think? What are the requirements for the first one? Sales, 10% increase over 5 years, over 3 years. What are the requirements for the first one? First strategic goal.
The sales of 10% increase
Over 3 years.
Experience is from December.
Experience.
Experience and knowledge, yeah. Well, the sales.
Yeah, knowledge of the sound.
They want the knowledge in terms of relationships that they may have with the people, but then abilities.
No, that's based on an assumption that you don't have it now. So I'm saying they're different levels, because if it requires producing more, right? If it requires producing more, two things can happen: more human labor or more technology, or a bit of both. Some increase in staff and some increase in technology. So the decision on technology would influence the increase in staff, because once you make a technology decision, Tina, that we will bring in advanced technology to boost sales, it has implications for the number of staff you're going to get. But if you're committed to the human resource and the union pressures you, you will defer to we got to keep like, right now we're not going to bring in technology. We're going to hire more people. Correct. So it means then that if you bring in technology to boost sales, there are implications for training and retraining. But you still need to find out what competencies are required. That's why I said the skills inventory is important. So you will still have to focus on this. And then based on what are the requirements in terms of increasing sales, production to produce more products, that is one aspect. But what about the sales staff now? So after you've produced the product, you might need sales staff. You might need to, suppose you now have 20 sales staff. You need to make a decision. So what would help us determine that? What would help us determine? You currently have 20. What in the HR planning would help you to determine the number of staff you need? Anybody? What would tell you which? Sorry? Forecasting demand. Yeah, forecasting demand. So when you forecast demand, it's making a projection that based on the strategic goals, these are you're going to need 10 more sales staff. Right? That's what the forecasting demand is about. You understand? So the forecasting demand is an abstract thing. You are likely to need 10 more sales staff. The skills inventory determines, do we have people inside that meet the requirements for the additional, if it requires any new skills. And if you have to go outside to look, it tells you then, when we start to hire, these are the requirements we need to follow when we start to hire. Everybody with me? Right? With me, Sachi? You're with me, Tracy? Right? Okay. Right? And this is a benchmark to make sure you hire the right people. So you're looking at experience, you're looking at knowledge, so you're not only looking for qualifications, so the experience says this is somebody who can do it. Knowledge, you have to have practical knowledge, and then you're looking now at the qualifications that can come. So for number 2, what is required for number 2? This is an interesting one. Innovation. So what is required? But what is required for new product line? What is going to be required?
You mean it's
right. So if it is mechanistic, what's the issue? But the mechanistic structure or culture would actually kill creativity and innovation. So what does it mean for the organization if it is basically bureaucratic and mechanistic? But what would it have to do to meet this objective? They have to change their structure, and just what we talked about before. They have to find ways to change from that bureaucracy is a culture. The bureaucracy is a culture, the way in which things are done. It's not static or abstract. It's a culture of rules and regulations and lack of feedback and top-down decision making. It's a whole culture of management that supports a bureaucracy. So innovation, so you need a different type of person, and again, this helps you to determine the profile. So what you do then, when you develop in the job analysis, you will do your job description and your job specifications. You remember we had that earlier? So when we do something had job analysis, where is it? I saw it earlier. But you will have to do a job analysis which identifies the job descriptions and the job specifications, and based on those you can then you will then be able to outline the criteria for the job after you have done a job description, because you need to be clear what are the duties and responsibilities for the job, and based on the duties and responsibilities you can then develop the requirements or the specifications for the job. Everybody with me? So you first have to define the job. What will this job involve? What are the duties and responsibilities? And once I know the duties and responsibilities for this new set of jobs that will be innovative, I can then determine the requirements for it. What kind of knowledge and skills and abilities that will be necessary to fit into the duties and responsibilities, which will be a lot on innovation and creating things. And from that, you then need to determine who am I going to hire. How am I going to deal with this organization that is not flexible, that is not amenable to innovation? So you're basically creating a new organization. Right? So how can the organization, without creating a new organization, actually begin to achieve this? There's a way you can do it, actually. And it deals with structure. So there's something, you remember when you would have done organization, structure in organizations. So you've got the org structure. So this is the traditional organization. So say we have a president, two vice presidents, right? That's the president, vice president, vice president. And you have your functional department. So this is marketing, this is finance, this is production, this is HR, and this is sales. So what you do, you create what we call a matrix structure. Y'all ever heard about that? Anybody ever heard about a matrix structure? So you can search it up on the web. So what a matrix structure is, a lot of matrix structures are used for special projects. So what you do, you select people from here to work in this, but you could also hire people on contracted labor. So I'm not disrupting this, because to change this is going to take a long time. So I create a matrix, and I have one of the VPs in charge of this project that focuses on product development. So I found when I did my supply assessment, there are about 5 people from the current staff who got a good fit. But how I staff my matrix structure, I actually hire people on contract from outside who are innovators. And these innovators now will feed into this bureaucracy with the hope of you're trying to create this new product. Because remember, the goal is to create a new product. So I can't get a bureaucracy to create a product. My matrix, and the matrix, these kind of matrix structures can last from 1 to 2 to 3, depending on how long projects are. But they're still employees. The ones that go over, the 5, are still employees of the main organization. But this is just a temporary project-based structure. You're familiar, I see you shaking your head, you're familiar with this issue?
Yeah.
Yes. So they be popular a lot more in the developed countries. So you have some people, companies with 3 and 4 matrix structures operating different projects simultaneously. You understand the point? So you can still achieve the objective of being innovative. So you have your innovative product, and you just give it to the sales staff, you upgrade your sales staff, and they can sell the innovative product. But you surely will not get this structure if it is bureaucratic or just traditional type of private sector organization. You can't get them innovative in a matter of a year or 2. You create the entity that can allow you to do it. So once they innovate and produce the product, the matrix disbands. And the people on contract, they look for other jobs, and the 5 workers are absorbed back into the organization. So you can read up on the matrix structure and the benefits and purposes of a matrix structure. So I'll end here. So it's now, right, 7:40. So just let me save this file. So could you please gather in your groups, the tourism together and the other people, so that we can have a quick meeting. Mm-hmm.